Welcome to today's session where we will be discussing engaging your digital community, reaching others online. My name is Richard and I'm going to be hosting or facilitating this conversation. This event is part of Cliff Digital Week. Cliff Digital Week is happening from the 11th to the 15th of October and is an opportunity for you to discover what Cliff has to offer in the digital space and to find new ways to connect with the college. Alongside this event, Cliff Digital Week includes a variety of events, conversations, and digital resources that can be accessed on Zoom, Facebook, YouTube, the Cliff College website, and our online learning platform. For more information, visit cliffcollege.ac.uk/digitalweek 2021. Today, we have a special guest that is going to be joining us for this conversation. And I'm sure that you're going to appreciate all of the little nuggets and wisdom that he's going to be sharing with us. Mark, welcome so much. And thank you so much for joining us in this conversation.
Thank you for having me, Richard. It is great to be with you.
Fantastic. So, I mean, for those that are watching and maybe they're not too familiar about your work or who it is that you are, why don't you share a little bit about who you are, what you do, and we'll go from there.
Great. My name's Mark Crosby, and I'm the Director of Communications for Vineyard Churches in the UK and Ireland. And I've also written a book called So Everyone Can Hear, which is all around communicating church in a digital culture. And the story behind that was I was feeling prompted to write that book. I wrote a dissertation going back nearly 20 years now, and that dissertation was how churches should market themselves in the 21st century. And then 20 years later, I got a chance to turn my thinking and my thoughts, my passion from that into a book. And I was going to write it so that it was published in September 2020. And I just felt a really strong leading and prompting from God to bring it forward a year. And so it got published in September 2019, and I had no idea why a digital or a book around the digital culture would be so necessary at that point. And then fast forward 5.5 months, and we all got plunged into lockdown, and we pivoted very quickly onto digital and Zoom and kind of all sorts of things that we had never prepared or planned for to that scale. And so super grateful for God's leading in that. So that's a little bit about me, but my day job as the Director of Comms, I've got a small team, and we oversee anything, whether it's social media or film or publishing, TV, radio, like anything that's like our job basically in comms is to make sure that everyone who needs to know knows. And so whatever that looks like, whatever it sounds like, whether it's written down, texted, sent, printed, posted, whatever we use to get that message across, to write that messaging and then to get it into the right hands, that comes across our desks, and we try to finesse that as best as we possibly can, and work it all out amongst the jumble of ministry and the leading of the Holy Spirit. So that's what we do, and I love it. I love what I get to do, and privileged to be here and share.
Oh, thank you so much for that. It kind of sounds like it was definitely a God thing, pushing it forward a year to 2019 to then kind of, go into the pandemic, put my teeth back in, pandemic, to go into the pandemic where, loads of churches got forced, by hook or by crook to go online. So it just sounds like it was God just setting that up, man. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there were many different people around especially the UK church, because that's my context, but there was many people who were they stepped into the gap to help to fill the void of when churches went help. People like the guys at the Digital Church Toolkit was super helpful, who just responded really quickly with this is how to do things. But I think one of the great stories I loved is that we were about to go into lockdown back in early to mid-March. And I had this idea, I was like, we're making these resources for the Vineyard movement. What is Zoom? How can you use it? What would small groups, home groups, cell groups, how could that look like when you can't actually see each other? Pastoral care, what does that look like? church services, like not that church services are the pinnacle of what we do or why we exist, but how do you help people to gather when they can't gather? Like, what does that look like? How do you journey things together? And like, I popped onto a call really quickly, and I rallied a few friends, and we made this this very quick website, which was just like loads of resources that, well, to start with, it was a Google document that we could share, and we made the Google document publicly available with hundreds of resources of like how churches can do things. And we set it up as a website, and then we got some more help from a consultancy firm in London who gave some time free of charge, and it just became this amazing website, beautifully designed by those guys, that we could quickly and easily just put resources in, and that was viewed like hundreds of thousands of times around the world during the pandemic. And like, I just think one of my, well, two of my learning moments from the pandemic was like how faithful was God during the pandemic. Like, wow, like just incredible. And secondly, the unity in the church has just been incredible. So the number of friends who I met or made or strengthened during the pandemic was just incredible, and how they came together and pulled that thing so that me and you, Richard, and like my parents at a Church of England church in York, and different friends in Church of Wales and Baptist, Catholic, wherever they were, could live stream their services without reinventing that wheel over and over again. And they could do their small groups, and they could take care of people pastorally, and they could lead people, and they could stay connected, and they could do a phone service that would keep people who don't have the internet connected. I think all of these things have just been amazing. So I've been blown away by the UK church during this time. Definitely hard, but definitely amazing as well.
You know, I think you kind of mentioned it, and I kind of, just as you're speaking, is so in awe of God that, do you know what, even before, for a lot of us, you know, entering the pandemic just caught us completely unaware that, you know, this is what's going to be happening. I know for me, 2020, everyone was like, 2020, the start of a new decade, best decade ever. And before you know it, like lockdown, it completely caught us unaware. But how amazing is that it didn't catch God unaware, and he was putting it on people like yourself and some of the other people that you've mentioned, that actually there's a resource here that can help the church navigate through this. Oh, God's amazing. I think that's fantastic.
So good. And part of my story is we're part of a Vineyard church here in Cardiff, and we're a multi-site church, and so we meet at 3 locations. And my wife and I, during 2019, we felt God call us to start a new site here in the west of Cardiff, which we did. And we had our first service on March the 8th. And we had our first service. It was amazing, went really well. The following Friday, we pulled the plug on all of our services, and we'd done one physical service, and then we took those onto YouTube, and then we had weekly Zoom services, and we hadn't really had a chance to gather. And we only went back just before the summer, but just the faithfulness of God, that even though we'd started something, he maintained it and he grew it during that time, to the point where now we've relaunched morning services with kids and youth and all sorts, and we still got masks and we're still being careful, but just that God would find a way to keep those things going. Just amazing.
Wow. So, I mean, you're living up to the introduction, which is amazing, when we're saying that you are somebody that actually isn't just speaking theory about it, you're living it and you're doing it, which is amazing. I've got a bit of a personal question to ask. So, you know, there's so many different digital platforms that are out there at the moment. What are some of the ones that you personally use and that you enjoy?
Oh, I tell you the ones I don't use.
Okay, cool.
Is I try to stay away from Twitter, and so I don't have Twitter installed on my phone. I do have an account and I post sporadically, but I'd never check the news feed because I find it so toxic. And so I think that Twitter is a really great tool. I just think that especially in a pandemic, I've needed as much positivity as I can. And I found that the negative spaces I've stayed away from. I've stayed away from Facebook because I know that it's engineered around making people waste their time on there and to see adverts. And so Facebook prioritize time and they prioritize revenue. And I don't have time to spend, and I don't want to see loads of adverts. I do use Instagram, so I came off Instagram and then went back on during the first week of the lockdown in March 2020, because I wanted to see what my friends and family's stories were during that time. And I don't post a huge amount because I'm not sure I've got anything massively to say that's really important or interesting. There's like that quote of like, never have so many people recorded them doing so little. And it's like, people have got such a voice, and like I love it because everyone's a storyteller and everyone's a journalist and everyone has something to say, except when people have got nothing to say.
So is it like when people are kind of posting like, about to eat my dinner,
Yeah,
just eating my dinner, now washing the plate, like, you know, kind of just like,
here's a picture of my dog, and I'm like, it's the same dog that you posted a picture of last week. But like I love it, like I love the kind of insight, but I also love it where I see like a friend who needs help, and rather than engaging on kind of Instagram, I just pick up the phone or I text them or pop round. And I think what I love is digital gives you an insight into the physical, but if you only stay in the digital, you miss that chance to build a physical relationship. And so that's always been my thing around digital. I love what it makes possible, and I am careful about what it deters us from doing, which comes naturally. So that's my love-hate relationship with social media.
I mean, it's interesting you say that. I mean, because digital has definitely become something that, whether we like it or not, it's a massive part of society now.
Yeah.
How do you get that balance of not allowing digital social media to replace reality and that meeting physically? I know that's a pretty heavy question, but
Great question.
I wonder how do we go about getting that balance?
So how do you stop it replacing reality? I think one of the things is, and a guy called John Mark Home has been really helpful in this, and he's written a book, How to Unhurry Your Life, or something like that, The Pursuit of Unhurriedness or something. I don't know, great book. And what we found helpful in my household is we do things like we have time away from phones. So there's my wife and 2 children in this house, and we've also got a person who is staying with us, and we have the dining table is where phones aren't allowed. And so we have family moments, family conversations, and there's certain people who aren't invited into those conversations, which means that we put our phones away, which means we put our phones on silent, we put them to one side. Phones aren't allowed upstairs, and so phones are put in a box downstairs, we put them on charge, we leave them downstairs. That means that mentally we're not going to bed looking at a screen, thinking about work, engaging with that. First thing we do when we wake up is we start a day with Jesus and try and be like him. So we read our Bibles, we pray before we engage in what the world is saying. We try and be informed by what God is saying. And then every week we have a Sabbath, like those of you who are watching, we have a Sabbath, and on that day we switch our phones off. And so it's a phone-free time. And so although we lead a church from Friday evening until Saturday evening, we're not available. I do have an emergency phone, which is like a battered old, like a Nokia 3210, which
3210, we're going back there.
it's still going strong. I've had it for years, and it's still.
Oh, they don't make them like they used to. Snakes.
They don't make them like they used to. It doesn't do much, but it takes an emergency phone call in case I need it. So like 3 people have got that phone number: my boss, my mum, my mother-in-law, and just in case anything happens where we're needed, that's what happens. But I think what we need is we need regular rhythms where we can reset and recalibrate and recenter ourselves. And we need to recenter ourselves around God and the Bible and who he says we are, because otherwise we're just informed. We're bombarded by messages and podcasts and webinars, and all of them, there's nothing wrong with those in themselves, but we just get so many messages that we end up playing catch up with all of these things, and then we find ourselves struggling. And actually just taking a break, taking some time, we'll never get to the bottom of our feed. We'll never get to the very end of our podcast listening list. And in the same way, I'll never actually finish the pile of books next to my bed. It's always growing by a book a week. And I even with a self-imposed ban, I'm always like kind of, oh, I should really buy that book. But like, we just need to like stop and say, like, I just need to be a human, a child of God, and recognize my limitations and just go to him and just let his promises just wash over me.
Well, I love that so much. And I mean, again, sorry, I didn't even mention this, but for those of you that are watching this, I mean, if you've got any questions, please put them into the chat, and we will try and get back to answering them by the end of the week latest. But if you are watching this and you're like, that's really good, I got this question, please join in on the chat. I love that. I love what you said, because I feel like effectively what you're saying is that we need to kind of put some boundaries in place here. We can't just let this thing be unchecked and just go wherever we want to. And I know I'm so guilty personally of just going up to my bedroom and my phone is, let me just check my phone one last time before I sleep. And waking up in the morning, it's so easy for me personally to rather kind of just draw from my phone to see what's happening instead of actually, let me get with God and see what he has to say to me today. I love that. And that's amazing advice, what you've just given there. Thank you so much. Are there any people that you follow online? We've got loads of social media personalities, vloggers and stuff like that. Are there any ones that you follow that you like, I benefit a lot from these people? Christian world, or maybe not even in the Christian world,
Really interesting. Yeah, like I try and stay quite finite in how many people I follow, because I find it that I can be completely overwhelmed. And so I try to, my people I follow, I tend to follow them because either like I find them inspiring, or they're a friend who I find inspiring. And so in terms of people who I let follow me, that's based around whether we would let them inside our house, around our table, speak and pour into our children. So like I've got quite a close circle around that. But I do massively benefit from following friends like the Digital Church Toolkit. Now they are church pioneers and they love the church, but what they know about social media and digital and tech platforms and how churches engage in those platforms is absolutely brilliant. And they know so much. And they've recently had a partnership with CPO, who are like kind of church heroes and legends who have been going for years, and they formed something called the Common Good Studio, and it's just an amazing Instagram account to check out. And the guys who run those things, Peter Murden especially, great friend, highly recommend. From outside of the Christian world, like I find it always really helpful to look out and see who are the voices and the pioneers and the movers and shakers that inspire us. Because if we only, especially around technology, if we only follow or listen to what the church says, then we find ourselves slightly limited. So I follow a guy called Casey Neistat, who is a filmmaker, and he daily vlogged for a number of years. But he also set up a technology company that he sold to CNN. And people who have an interesting story like that, I find really helpful. Who else would I follow who I find helpful? I mean, I would follow you if I like kind of after this call, like I would love to have a chat about you and hear your story. And then I'd love to follow you because I've loved what we said before you hit record. We were having a great conversation and then we said, let's pause this. But I'd love to follow you. So like my recommendation would for people to follow you, the Digital Church Toolkit, people like that I just find so helpful.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love what you say. You said then about actually we're not going to have these people around our table to speak to us and into our children. I'm not sure if I'm going to follow them, because I guess again it is that kind of using a filter for actually like, how does this translate to real life? We wouldn't do this in real life. Should we really translate it into our digital life? Which it's so easy to kind of have these two different worlds, and maybe what you would necessarily do in this world, in the digital world, isn't what you would do in real life. So I really I just feel like that's a great rule of thumb that I'll take on board. Time is going because I just feel like I can eat from you so much. The knowledge that you're giving, it's amazing. I've got a couple more questions if that's okay to go through. So one of the biggest challenges about digital work is engaging those outside of the church. What are some of the ways that we can overcome this?
So engaging with those outside of the church, how we overcome it. I think my number one thing would be we need to be really authentic. And so we need to be authentic over our language. And so with our language, we need to be approachable. We need to be normal. We need to cut out, I think, like when we look at the stats, the number of people who have engaged in church or prayer or watching online during the pandemic, we know that we have this amazing opportunity right now during 2021 and then into 2022. People are praying, people are looking at the church, people are looking for the kind of answers that we know that can be found in Jesus. And so what we want to do is know that they are looking at our websites, they're looking at our social media accounts, they're looking at our YouTube channels. So our language needs to be approachable, needs to be normal, we need to cut out our kind of Christianese language. We need to kind of dumb it down to know that we are speaking to our church family, we're also speaking into our city as well. And so be aware of who you're speaking to. I think when you're using photos, again, it's real and it's authentic and it's local. And so if you're taking pictures of your staff team, for example, take those people out to like your nearest local landmark. Like maybe you've got a theatre, maybe you've got a hill, maybe you've got something really iconic. Take those people out when it's a nice blue sunny day and take pictures of them around your city, your town, your village, your neighborhood. And so people see that those are people inside your city. Those are people who are for your city. Like where you take pictures, where you take videos, it communicates so much. And so take those things outside of your church building. I think engage with what's happening in your city, whether that's you follow like your local councils, the events, local cafes, like and comment on things that they post, like love that, looks great. Go there, take photos of things that they're doing, tag yourselves in there, build up relationships, like be real with people. It's all about relationships. And so you're not doing this because you want to engage with people outside of your church. You're doing this because you want to love your neighbors and you want to love your city. And so by doing things like that, you're kind of placing yourself in your city. And like I use the term city to kind of include wherever you are, but also that prophetic sense that like towns are moving into cities, and our hopes for our towns and villages is that God would grow it and bless them. But I think also when you're sharing things, make them easy to invite. So when you're sharing something on an Instagram story, make it easy to screenshot and write your text on there. And so if like I'm a church comms person and we have, I don't know, we've got a fireworks party, leave some space on whatever you post on your Insta story that then like my friend can screenshot it, he can put it down onto his Insta story and he can just tag some people, like tag some friends that you want to invite. Like make it really easy for people to use digital in order to invite, but they don't need to replicate what you've already done, but you have made capacity in what you've created that they can then use that for invitation. And I think the last thing I'd say is tell stories, like tell stories of what God has done, like people have come to faith, had their lives transformed, where a community has been changed by what Jesus has done. Tell those stories and don't film those in your church, film those in your city. So I'm like, get out there, get out there, get out there, relate, tell stories, be real, be authentic, and just get amongst people.
Love that. I think there was so much richness in what you said. And I almost feel like for me, as much as there's an emphasis, or my heart is very much emphasized on kind of like, you know, I don't just want us all to be in the building having this good time and people are outside and not knowing. It's about us physically getting outside and engaging with our community and our neighbors. I guess it sounds like you're saying have that same mentality online as well. So the same way that you would just like, you know, we want to be outreaching in a physical sense, let's be outreaching online and showing that we're doing that. Am I right?
Yeah. I think it's knowing when you're talking about family business and when you're not. So there's like internal communication, there's external communication, and sometimes you just need to speak directly to the church family. And there's things for that, like kind of emails and like church meetings, leaders meetings. But when you are using your social media and your platforms and stuff, know that the world is also watching and listening and is looking for that moment to be invited. And so there's like, I think, know your audience and use the internal channels to speak to internal people, and use external channels like your social media to speak to your city as well. And always use that invitational language. That would be one of my tips.
Oh, brilliant. Do want to kind of, we've got to draw this to a close soon, but I've got one last question. I'm gonna settle on this being the last question, but like what would you say are some of the challenges that the churches should look out for with the social media? I mean, we've discussed it personally, but as a church, that's like, okay, cool, we want to embrace this, we're stepping out on this. What do you think are some of the challenges that churches should look out for?
Yeah, I think there's a few challenges, and they come down to probably skill, time, and resource. Skill, have you got the right people in place who know how to use it? And like I recognize that not every church will have a social media person, and not every church will have a person who is instantly tech savvy and know how to pick up a phone and make some magic happen. Like, that's the reality. Like, the beauty of the church is that we are this wonderful patchwork quilt of churches of different shapes and sizes, and so not everyone will have that skill. So it takes resource, which means investment. And what I've noticed during the pandemic is the higher cost for social media and comms roles has increased, because churches have recognized that there is a need for them to have a person like this on staff or kind of on team, whether that's half a day a week or 3 to 5 days per week. There is a need for that. And then I think there's a training issue. And so I think we need to train people, we need to source the right people, and we need to try and bless them somehow through what financial resource we make available for that. And I recognize that that's not always straightforward. For training, there's all sorts of things out there. So places like Google do some, Facebook do some, MailChimp, which is an email marketing program, they do their own. Lots of these people do their own free stuff. But then people like the Digital Church Toolkit have like training webinars that you can sign up to. And I'm sure you guys have ways and means of training people, but there's lots of free stuff out there, but have a training plan. And I think some of those challenges are people, time, and money, but with all God, all things are possible. So I just, like, I feel encouraged, because when I wrote my dissertation 20 years ago, these jobs didn't exist. And I spent 20 years praying that these things would exist. And we find ourselves at a point in a junction now in our church culture where we're taking it seriously, that this is a way that we reach people, and it's a ministry. It's not just we want to market the church, but we want to invite people into a relationship with Jesus. And one of the ways we do that is we make our front door to the church wide open by using digital, by using social media, to allow more people to walk through, to allow more people to meet us. And by doing so, they can encounter Jesus in the presence of God. So really encourage, and I would just encourage churches to press into it, just make one step, do one thing that would make your social media and your digital that little bit better, a bit more improved. Start something, do something, just take one more step every year and you'll get there.
That's amazing. Mark, listen, thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, and just for sharing. I don't know about you guys, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. For those that are like, you know what, this was golden, I need more, like, where can they kind of like hear more about you, find out more about you? Is there any kind of like, you know, I know you said you don't use Twitter too tough personally, but have you got Twitter, Instagram? Where can people find out more about you and your book?
I've got a Twitter account which is at Mark Crosby. I've got a website, markcrosby.cc, and I've got book. I don't even think I've got a copy laying around. It's probably propping up a table somewhere, but it's called So Everyone Can Hear, and it's by me, Mark Crosby, and you can find it on pretty much anywhere that sells books.
Right. Mark, thank you so much, guys. I really hope that you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. Again, please, 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 thank you for being a part of this conversation. Enter your questions in the comments and we will get back to you. But I hope that you enjoy the rest of the week. Mark, thank you once again. Have a beautiful day and we'll see you all soon. God bless.